Hello, welcome to Yates Makes. This video is very much a continuation of my previous two videos in which I've been looking at how to use the gel plate with mixed media techniques. This has got a real focus on drawing though, and how you can really spice up your drawing and develop your drawing into more interesting avenues or possibly new avenues just by incorporating some collage produced on the gel plate and combined loosely in some areas, and as in my last example, far more precisely to give a more kind of illustrative finish. Alright, let's get into it. So the first thing you'll need to do is prepare some collage layers. Now I've been transferring some textures onto wet strength tissue paper, sometimes called carnival paper over here in the UK. There's a big bundle I prepared. If you want more direction or help with preparing these, check out my last two videos. There's loads of examples on how to prepare a range of interesting textures on those videos. So all I'm doing now is just sort of ripping them back a bit, making them into more manageable and a pile of more interesting varied shapes. So here we go with example number one. All I've got here is a photograph that I've taken of a farm building while I was on a walk, and I'm drawing straight into my sketchbook, penning in with an ink pen. This is permanent. It's like a drawing pen with permanent black ink in. So once I'd got my drawing kind of sketched in and part of it completed, I can then start playing around with some collaged areas, and you just want to play and position things, rip along, try and match shapes, try and, I guess, stick to some lines and edges, especially where you're doing something architectural like I'm doing at the moment. But having some areas, as I'm doing with this orange piece, kind of overlapping both your background and your subject matter, your main subject matter, you're going to start getting some interesting abstraction and some interesting tone and texture to your drawing. The best thing about using wet strength tissue is that any parts you layer up, you're going to get some of that transparency working in your favour. Layers start to blend and combine nicely. And of course, the transparency of the paper means that the drawing you've already done, you can see through. You don't have to redraw anything. You can just add some more opacity to your lines, your tones where you need to, if you feel you need to. So you can see I've mainly used up to this point some textured layers with just sort of a broken kind of fractured texture to them. This part that I'm putting on was part of a magazine transfer, so I've got some graphic elements, some text, parts, fragments of pictures, and yeah, using this black permanent drawing pen means I've got a nice opaque line to go back over the top of those collage layers, and I can start working in some detail where I feel I need it. So this is one approach. I'll show you some close-ups now just so you can see how those pen lines and marks are working, interacting with those layers, and how those layers of collage just then sink nicely down into the base of the drawing, adding another dimension. Okay, this next example is a little observational drawing of a badger skull that I found in the fields and cleaned up, and it was an opportunity. I love observational drawing, so this particularly directly from objects rather than pictures. This gave me a really nice opportunity to try out some materials that I was given as a present with some Neo Color 2, which is a water-soluble pastel. So good because they blend dry quite nicely, and you can layer them up and work into them. But the second you get some water on there, whether we're using a brush pen or using a paintbrush, you get these lovely soft textures. Also mixing in some ink tense pastels here, just to get some slightly heavier tonal work into my shadows, and then finally working in with that same permanent pen just to kind of get a bit of contour and detail in there. Again, using my collage papers, a mixture, again on wet strength tissue, as in this piece, a magazine transfer, other times just some plain sort of crackled texture. Beauty of this is it's see-through, so you can really cut trace, get some quite specific shapes cut if you want. You know, here I'm trying to just pull my object forward by creating essentially some background tone and texture. In places I'm experimenting with layering over my drawing. In other areas I'm just building up the background. Now this is a fantastic little stencil that I've got hold of. This was sent to me by the Gel Elf people. My next video will be a review of their kind of updated products, just to let you know my opinions on those. But the little stencil pack they sent me, I just couldn't resist. As soon as that came out of the package, I've been using it non-stop. You know, they're really, really cool. So that'll be part of the review that I'll do in more detail. But so quick to get a little halftone dot pattern transfer there. Really, really cool little stencils. You can just wipe them clean as well. They're on a kind of thin plastic. So I've made myself a little masked window here, because I wanted a very specific shape to transfer as well. There's some text transferred onto the gel plate there from a magazine transfer, and I just wanted that in a very specific shape rather than just kind of sprawling all over. So making that little mask window just helps you control the shape a bit more precisely. And of course I need that to be transparent, so I've transferred it with some gel medium. You can refer back to old videos. I'll link in the description below for some of these techniques. It's always a danger, I don't want to be repetitive, you know, but so if I'm skirting over some of these techniques, just let me know in the comments. I'll link videos that kind of refer to these things in more detail. Finally working in with a good old HB pencil just to get a little more depth and detail in areas, and there you go, there's a quick close-up so you can see how those, again, just like with the last example, those textured layers kind of combine and sink into your drawing work. Okay, the last example is a far more involved piece that I just kind of found myself, I fell into this in my holiday. I think I just needed to slow down. I needed something quite meditative, quite methodical, and I'd taken a quick snapshot of this shop front, which is something of local kind of Cambridge folklore. It's a shop called Roll On Blank Tapes, which literally sold blank audio cassettes. No one ever knew how it stayed in business so long. It must have been a front for something else. Anyway, you know how these kind of urban legends all kind of develop. But you can see that with these same textured collage pieces all transferred onto wet strength tissue, I'm being far more precise in areas to make them really kind of describe certain textures that are in the picture that I'm working from. Again though, I'm mixing in my Neo Colour 2, my pens, the same drawing media and painting media that I'd used in previous examples. It's just that I'm using the collage pieces far more precisely. So again, as I said before, this was just meditative, slow, kind of comfortable work, just building areas up, doing it over a series of days. But what I really enjoyed is when I got into this stage. Now, rather than, this is like a black ceramic tile that sits underneath the window, and you know, this sort of thing is really laborious to paint and certainly doesn't excite me that much. You know, I don't usually work in this much detail. So what I thought I'd do is work on, can I use collage pieces even more precisely and work with multiples. So I thought, right, I'll mix up a kind of grey black kind of gradient running across the gel plate, pulled that off on my tissue paper, and I've got the starting point for my tiles. Now all I've done is folded a piece of paper in half here, marked on the shape of a single tile, folded my piece of collage material multiple times, slotted that into my little paper envelope, cut that out, and hey presto, I get multiples. And these are far easier to just then use my gel medium. You'll notice I'm using gel medium for this because you know, I kind of had in mind from the start that I wanted this to be more permanent, more of a kind of you know, more archival. So yeah, laying these out, realised straight off that they're going to work really well. I kind of like the colour shift going across them. They're not all uniform just because of that gradient that I'd put on the gel plate in the first place. So I've got a nice variety in tone and texture as well. And yeah, once I'd laid a few out, made sure they were all roughly the right size, roughly the right shape, a little bit of gel medium on the back, and off I go, kind of tiling in miniature. So again, this is so kind of, it's almost like paint by numbers by this stage. It's so meditative, so kind of relaxing, which is exactly what I needed on my short holiday I had from work a while back. So yeah, there we go, building these up. I'll speed the video along a bit because I'm sure you don't want to kind of fall asleep watching me laboriously stick on tiny squares of collage material. Okay, you know, the lovely thing about working in this way with the gel plate is it's so versatile and encourages so much kind of inquiry to try and achieve the textures you want. So having done my kind of boarded up windows, found a texture for that, having done my ceramic tiles that you just see me do, I had this sort of lovely faded wooden signage that ran across the top of the windows. So I thought, well, why not just use a piece of wood? So what I've done here is I'm inking up in some, I don't know, sort of very dark bluey grey, and a fairly thin layer, not too heavy. I'd not tried this before, and I've got an old frame that I've ripped. You know, it was a canvas frame basically, so it has, you know, not a heavy wooden texture or grain on it, but just heavy enough to give me that kind of wood effect. You know, what better than using the real thing to get the texture you want? So again, just sort of lightly pressing on there, just leaving it just long enough to pick up some of that surface paint that's wet, and there you go. Hey presto, got myself some wooden slats to then create another collage piece to do my signage. Now this one I pulled with some white acrylic. It didn't need to be transparent, it's not going to need to reveal anything underneath, so the white was fine. But again, onto some wet strength tissue, purely because it's kind of light and it's very easy to collage with and apply and reposition with your gel medium that you're using effectively as an adhesive for your collage material. So on with the wet strength tissue, leave that dry 5 or 10 minutes, and up comes my wooden signage texture. And again, you know, why would you want to paint this when you can just create it in, you know, a more kind of quick, efficient and interesting way? So then it's just a matter of cutting them to shape. Fiddly, of course, especially where they've, you know, as with this shape, where they kind of shape branches off around other features in the piece. So yeah, but you know, it's just really gratifying, really rewarding, and I think texturally looks good against hand-drawn areas. Okay, moving on, you can see the piece has developed somewhat. I've worked into some of that graffiti that's been sprayed all over the boarded up windows. A lot of this I've achieved with Posca pens. You see the little pink area underneath where I'm working at the moment? That was done with a little gel plate stencil. So I just cut the shape out, and then I got that nice fractured, broken colour. Other parts I've done with Posca pens, as I was just doing there. I scratched into the surface just to kind of break it up and further kind of age it. Some areas I'm literally just painting in with a brush. You can see the brickwork right next to where I'm working, and the lamppost was all done with collaged areas just cut to shape. And again, you know, I could have painted it, but texturally I just found it more exciting for this project just to have a play, see how far I could push in an illustrative sense some of these collage pieces that I've been making and got lying around all over the place. You know, what better way to use up kind of surplus bits, offcuts, you know, just keep them all in a folder. You never know when a project might come up where they come in handy. You see there the shopping trolley and the traffic cone. I mean, it couldn't be more cliched, this poor abandoned shop that's just been put up for auction. Literally someone had dumped a shopping trolley and a cone in. Yeah, total cliche, which is why I got the photo. Here I'm actually using parts of the original photograph that I've just enlarged, printed out on my my inkjet printer, and just collaging in the actual photograph, just scaled up a little, which I found, you know, variety I think in collage work is key. So again here I've scaled up the sign, the last little detail that I need to finish this piece off, and I've done a laser transfer of this using my black Amsterdam acrylic. On goes my laser transfer, and that's given me transferred again with some gel medium here onto a piece of wet strength tissue, and perfect. You know, some really fiddly writing in there that I really couldn't be bothered to draw out, and besides I like the texture, I like the finish of the laser copy transfer. You know, you can stick that down. Once it was stuck down, I built up a bit of colour in pencil colour and HB pencil over the top, just to tidy it up in areas and give it a little more depth in other areas. Again, you know, how wonderful is the gel plate in so many applications, just in this one little piece of illustration. You know, it can solve many riddles, that's for sure. Okay, the last, you know, little bit of footage here is just of me finishing up. You know, having finished this, you know, I'm back at work, and you know, instantly everything moves so much faster, so I'm going to be back on doing far quicker work, far more expressive. But you know, at the time I was doing this, it was just perfect. It was like a tonic, just what I needed, and a little bit of memory lane for me as well, to just kind of commemorate a little landmark that's going through some changes. Who knows, now it's gone for auction, what it's going to turn into. I thought I'd better memorialise it before it disappears forever. So there we go. As ever, please comment below any questions. Apologies, I didn't go into loads of detail about how to create the textures, but linked in the description box are videos that deal with how to do that. For the sake of being repetitive, I didn't go through it in loads of detail in this video. So there you go, that's pretty much how it came out. I did tinker with it a little more. Here are some details. Remember, subscribe, comment as I said before, drop the video a like if you enjoyed it. I'll look forward to seeing you soon in another video. Ta-ta.